All right. Hello, and welcome once again to White Lotus of Light conversational series. And I'm very fortunate to have the brilliant and wonderful Jennifer Arcuri on the interview today. She was voted Female Tech Entrepreneur of the Year. I want to say in 2017, it was some years ago, but she's an absolutely brilliant woman who works in the cybersecurity and tech space. And she's an expert on blockchain along with her husband. And so today in our conversation, we're going to be talking about blockchain and how to become white-pilled around blockchain and to recognize that there are peer-to-peer blockchain applications that are not necessarily invasive, but rather can preserve your privacy and security and can help create that decentralized finance that is really the promise and beauty that blockchain brings to us. And viewers of the channel, if you're not familiar, watch the Shadow War series. But for longtime viewers of the channel, blockchain, sometimes called the quantum financial system, it's going to start in 2025. And it's part of that Luciferian takeover from the evil Molochian satanic group. And when the Luciferians take over, that'll open a space for those of us who are aligned with Most High Consciousness, that Jesus, Yeshua, and other great teachers and spiritual figures throughout history have taught us about. And so we're going to be talking also about Jennifer Arcuri was also Boris Johnson's mistress when he was the mayor of London. And we're going to talk about how there's been some huge changes with him. And Jennifer even says in part 2 that she suspects that he may have been cloned or there may have been mind control involved. So it's a very fascinating conversation. Longtime viewers of this channel know that I teach angelic magic and Vedic astrology. Angelic magic can help you transform your life. It can help you to heal traumas. It can help you to step into your divine masculine or divine feminine, depending on what body you have. And it also allows you to create miracles in your life and rid yourself of self-limiting beliefs. And Vedic astrology helps you understand karmas of your life and how to lean into areas of strength that are supporting your chart, which can help you with your career, with your love life, with your art, and with your healing, with all different aspects of your life. Vedic astrology can really help you learn it. In fact, that's why I do what I do today. And I feel very blessed to have all the wonderful things going on in my life with the dramatic change. I'm someone who actually was a 40-year-old divorcee living in his mother's basement, and now I'm doing very well, living on my own, and have a beautiful family. And I feel really, really blessed with all the changes in my life. And it's really thanks to the combination of Vedic astrology and angelic magic. I sometimes talk about how there should be a spiritual Second Amendment because, unfortunately, the Molochian faction, again, refer to Shadow Wars if you don't understand these terms, the Molochian faction convinced people long ago not to use any of their God-given spiritual abilities, psychic abilities, requesting help from the angels in the form of ritual magic, which is just a more effective version of prayer, and the use of astrology. For example, the three magi were Chaldean astrologers who practiced a form of sidereal astrology like me, went and actually ended up saving Jesus, Yeshua, from King Herod. And they were the angels came to them and told them to warn Joseph and Mary about King Herod's purge of the innocents, killing all the boy children, because they had unfortunately gone to King Herod's court first, thinking that the great king they saw in the stars was going to be born in his court. And so magicians and astrology were right there at the very beginning of the Bible. And unfortunately, during the Council of Nicaea and other later edits, they removed this information because they didn't want you to have access to spiritual powers and abilities that could help us in the what I sometimes call the shadow war, the spiritual war that's going on between these three levels of consciousness: the evil satanic Molochians, the neutral and sometimes trending evil and sometimes trending good Luciferian consciousness, and then the beautiful, peaceful, harmonious, most high consciousness, which is what I strive for and build my life around, creating a structure in order to help others develop that part of their consciousness. So arm yourself and take advantage. And for the first time ever, I am openly offering sliding scale and installment plans, so students can come in and learn Vedic astrology to learn your life's karmas and all the massively transformative magical miracles that happen with angelic magic. And we're going to be extending registration until July 17th, and you can get caught up on the first class, which will be recorded. In fact, the astrology class, you don't even need to attend the courses live. You do need to attend every other week in angelic magic on Thursdays. There's classes for the EU and UK. There's a class for the United States, and then there's a class for Australia, Oceania time zones. Because due to planetary hours, again, astrological influence, the rituals do need to be done on Thursday calendar day in your locality. And I've set up the classes to fit your time zone. So if you're interested, there'll be advertisements further in this video that you can take a look at, or you can go to whitelotusoflight.com, and there you can email me and contact me about these reduced rates. Just be honest with me and tell me what your situation is, and then we'll go from there. And I look forward to having you in the class. Thanks, and now enjoy this incredible interview with Jennifer Arcuri. All right, well, hello and welcome once again to White Lotus of Light conversational series. I'm really honored and excited to have Jennifer Arcuri on the show. She is a tech entrepreneur with a focus on cybersecurity and financial technology. And if I remember correctly, Jennifer, weren't you like Tech Woman of the Year in the UK or something like that about 5, 6, 7 years ago, something like that? You were considered like the premier female entrepreneur in tech in the UK?
I wouldn't say that. I mean, I mean, there were a lot of, yeah. I mean, when you're on the cool list, they give you a lot of awards and stuff. And a lot of the work that I did was extremely positive and beneficial. So I was excited that a lot of people embraced me and as part of the community. I think that was the biggest reward for me. You know, I was a student showing up in London, and then, you know, suddenly I'm diving into the entrepreneurial world, specifically tech.
Mm-hmm.
And I fell in love with London just because there was so much to do that had already either been done or, you know, everybody was over it in Silicon Valley. And London presented kind of all the great many hubs of the US under one roof in the city, you know, politics, entertainment, you know, so there was just so much there that I was drawn to. And the technology side really excited me because there was so much opportunity when I first came over as a student. So that's how I got started there.
That's awesome. And so you have the focus on cybersecurity and financial technology, and we talked a bit off camera about this. I often talk on this channel about what I call the shadow war, this struggle for power between kind of this old guard, slavery, top-down control mentality group that I call the Molochians, right? Who have a very dark, you know, people describe it as satanic kind of thing, all the Epstein style harm of children, blackmail, all that kind of stuff. And then a much more sophisticated and hyper intellectual and also sort of libertarian minded, still a false light, not like good guys, more to not white hats as they like to disguise themselves, but more like gray hats, people who are a little more morally ambivalent, whereas the Molochians are very entrenched in active evil, active the slavery and destruction of the innocent. The Luciferians don't really like the slavery. They don't really like the harm of children. They hate it, in fact. But they're also not like good guys. They're still like, okay, you got to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, meritocracy, social Darwinism. They're still pretty harsh and they're still pretty ruthless, but they believe in things like improving the material condition of humanity. They're very much the drivers of technology, and you see it kind of represented in medieval times in Florence is the Luciferians with all the Renaissance and so forth. And then Venice, the banking center, and actually who continues to run banking as the more Molochian group. And so I see this new emergent financial system that seems built around crypto, blockchain, and Web 3.0 as the nexus or center of this power struggle between these two groups, and it seems that the Luciferian system is transcendent, which is the blockchain of Web 3.0. And so can you describe a bit how you see this financial system and your experience in this financial system that's emerging? Like, how do you see that changing things in concrete ways that will affect people's day-to-day life and also politically?
Well, I think all of us have, been born in a time where the banking cartels have controlled all the financials, and we call it central banking for a reason, right? And the fractional reserve banking, the ability to create debt and and basically print from nothing, is what has given these the government the upper hand. And this has kind of been what we've been born into. We've always been taught this way. This is what most people know their entire lives. Naturally, as we come into this era where we're looking at the debasement of currency, I think what we're coming to is very different than what we've seen in the past, and not another stock exchange crash. We're coming into the end of a currency life cycle, which is very different. And this is because they have bastardized our currency. When we look at where they created the Federal Reserve in 1913, and then all the way up to 1945 with the announcement of Bretton Woods, going back to a gold standard, and then in 71 we go back off that gold standard so that we can just print away and keep up with our exponential spending. This is where we've seen the dollar's debasement happen over the last 100 years. And so now we're at the time where this isn't going to last. And they know that, right? So no matter how many times they mess with CPI data or, give you the hot song and dance about inflation, right? This is just talking points, noise, really, because at the end of the day, the money we hold, the fiat, is only lawful by government decree. It's not backed by anything real. It's hedged on debt, right? We run in a debt system. So this debt-based society that runs the current banking system, which you point out, is coming to its end. And is it Luciferian? You said the Luciferians.
Molochian's the old system. Yeah.
Yeah, so the Molochian is your old system. If you're saying the Luciferians are this kind of new, I mean, I hate using that word Luciferian because it just goes back to Lucifer and but it's very interesting, your theory, your concepts, and I love how you have really expanded on that in your talks. And when we were last talking about it, I know my audience was very interested in what you were saying about that. So I find it very fascinating the way you've categorized these two groups. But I think really, whatever you want to call it, we're kind of at this transition point where this technology, as we migrate from this centralized banking cartel, moving into needing liquidity, we're moving into this new blockchain system. And of course, this technology can be used for good and for bad. I mean, to put it very simply, everybody freaks out about CBDCs. I quite frankly, Ian, do not see the adoption possible. I don't see how they will be able to pull this off. It technically will never work. And I didn't know you agreed. And so I'm glad you do, because many people I speak to are like, yeah, but, they've got another headline for you. I'm like, no. We got to look at the technicals here. It's just like early days internet, which started with military, corporations, medical facilities. And then once, when we look at really quickly, the evolution of the internet, the first internet came out about just getting people online and giving them access to information. Then then as the internet expanded, the old days of the dial-up, then we go to Web 2.0, where everything's about sharing. So it's content creating and sharing, but you're still sharing within these centralized hub, corporation systems, right? So you're creating all this content that's owned and controlled by YouTube, or these big, and this has kind of backfired over the last year. It's the last few years, the rape and pillaging of data. This Web 2.0, where it was information overload, but not only information, it's that added layer of content creation and everybody kind of having their own 15 minutes of fame and creating their own shows. Then we're seeing now the evolution of the internet become in what they call Web 3. And this is thrown around a lot, Web 3.0, whatever. And this is actually the decentralization away from these centralized corporations. And a lot of people get weird about that because we've never entered, you know, they don't know, but instead of monetizing the big few on top, decentralizing means the ability to micro transact and create, not only create content, but to monetize that within your own permission is where the Web3 space is moving. And that is kind of the evolution in a nutshell of this internet. Now, blockchain comes in with all these new fancy currencies and new protocols and the interledger protocol that can run various, you know, all these different currencies. And naturally, they're looking at a way to adopt the banking cartel into this new financial system. So on my channel, I talk about how I see CBDCs as the carrot to bring the banks in, but it's the ultimate demise, you know, because just like the early days of internet, where we were like bringing in military, medical facilities, universities, right? They were the only ones allowed to have, remember the long string of early day emails, just like we're seeing with our digital wallets. It was all clunky, and the banging of the AOL. You remember all these early, you know, and then you get disconnected, it takes the phone line. And so now we're moving into a space where blockchain built in the browser is about the permissions you give it, not the rape and pillaging of your data, but your ability to control who owns your data, who sees it, who's verifying it. And this is all in the back end of how the internet is built and how Web3 will function, and why I think CBDCs will never take off, because they'll never, like the internet, they'll never be able to control the access of information. They'll try to regulate it, and that's why we're seeing, oh, you know, look, we can introduce central bank digital currencies. But what they're not telling you with Web3 is that you don't need central bank digital currencies. Like, who the hell is going to use those? Now, sure, there are certain utilities that can be used within issuing currencies tokenized on blockchain. So let's say an internal, you know, a company wants to issue reward bucks or incentivize you to come on their platform and spend their currency dollars, which they can issue via blockchain. Or what we're seeing with FedNow payments, where they are taking, making transparency. I mean, people are freaking out about the adoption of the central bank digital currencies, but some of these transactions, specifically and most importantly, government spending, must be accountable. I mean, there is a time and a place for this open, transparent, where the hell's the money going, you know? And when we think about taxes, you know, and where I mean, everybody thinks they go to the roads, schools, and hospitals, but when you actually look under the, you know, covers, you see that a lot of that is just embezzled, laundered, racketed, you know. We don't need to collect the money that we do in order to cover and live comfortably, but we have a lot of criminals taken from the top. And that's the way the game's always been. It's rigged. So I see Web3 as empowerment, as the future of freedom, and, you know, the future of the ability to put the hands of your power back into the hands of the users. And whether you're transacting, content creating, or browsing the internet, none of that is given away without your permission. And that's what these Web3 wallets are representing. Right now, we're seeing these wallets, these digital wallets, where you're buying your crypto and you're moving it off to a cold storage or a hot wallet. These wallets are like they remind me so much of early email, with these long strings of letters and the tag, and they're clunky, and there's regulatory like hang up, and just like you couldn't get on the internet, you can't get into the exchange, or they block you off, and all this kind of stuff. You know, this is just the first phase. We're going to see adoption where these digital wallets become your personal ability to bank, your ability to hold assets, your ability to hold tokenized, you know, digital, which is, when I say tokenized, it just means in code version, right? It's a little bit of code that, you know, like an NFT, a non-fungible token, fungible token. You've heard that phrase, right? So that's just a fancy way of saying a bit of code. Yeah. Right. And so all of that becomes tokenized on blockchain, and these wallets become your kind of permission to enter the internet. You're able to give away what you want to give away, and if you're not wanting to overextend, then you have complete freedom within your sovereign ability to hold that with Web3. And that's how I see the future of the decentralized financial system. Now, obviously, this technology is brilliant, and they're seeing how fast it can settle payments, bridge, currencies, solve a lot of liquidity problems, that we're coming into, not to mention revalue or create value back into the currency we hold, because our dollars are basically nothing right now. Mm-hmm. So when that happens, I think there's going to be a huge transition in our ability to transact. And that's why I tell people, do not worry what they're saying about central bank digital currencies. They technically cannot control what is happening here. And if you don't want to use them, don't use them. Federal payments can be made and issued as a CBDC out to you, but you don't have to hold everything you own or transact with or save with, or your children's savings, etc., based off this centralized system. Once we go into a Web3 blockchain system, these blockchains interoperate with these interledger protocols, and they're able to communicate like highways, so you're sending money not just through one messaging protocol like Swift, which is just antiquated tech of messaging, email service. You're able to seamlessly settle payments, within instance without the third party in between. It's funny, I've been listening to a lot of private equity, just to give you an example of this. So a lot of private equity investors, because I hold Ripple shares, Uphold, and I invested in some of these fintech companies, and I'm learning a lot from talking to these bigger investors, these bigger whales that have done this before. They've been in this space for years, and they're all complaining about they're giving advice about the best way to handle brokers, the best way to get the price, the best way to deal with shares. And I can't help but sit there and think, this is all middlemen noise. I don't want to ask a broker. I don't want to deal with their financial institution. I'm not asking their permission. No, nor do I care what they have. I want to know what the best asset is. And when I want to buy it, I want to be able to hold it in my own hands. I'm not asking, I don't want to be subject to the financial institutions. And this is how I see Web3 playing out. And when we move into this new financial world, we aren't dependent on banks. We don't need to hold our assets there. Now, they can come up with incentives, features, bells and whistles, whatever, to bring you in. Here's $5,000 to go spend as you will, or here's $1,000 extra top up money, but you can only spend it this way, and this way. Okay, fine. But that doesn't mean you have to do these things. And so a lot of the times when I'm listening, and also like the formations of trusts, again, I don't want some lawyer. I don't want to be dependent on a financial. I want to be able to hold my trust as in my living will and my children's birth certificates and everything in that trust, in my sovereign wallet without permission of some third party entity. And I think this is the biggest difference from this system to the next, because we are going to be moving into a place that is decentralized for the user to ultimately gain back their power and their sovereign right of holding their assets. And that really excites me. Now, this technology, like I said, can be used either way. So of course, you're going to have the old gang of criminals coming on, beating the drum for CBDCs and introducing parameters and carbon, like carbon taxes and all this nonsense, because what they're trying to do is keep the lid on the blockchain, keep it down. Don't let them know, look, this is only good because you are doing as you are a good little slave, complying with your carbon tax credits. And we're so nice, we give you this nice dashboard and show you all your spending. F that. If anybody introduces that, you shut down your card and you tell them, no way. These are parameters that are written in the application layer, not in the actual technology themselves. So the technology is not synonymous with surveillance. The surveillance bit, the code on the top, is written so that it can keep that technology under wraps. Just like the internet, when they first came out, they wanted to make big monopolies, AOL, you are only allowed to get online through these companies. Now we're seeing internet providers, you don't need to do the broadband, you're seeing this. Now, I still think the monopolies are there, but they're going to get even more. I actually hate big companies like BT in the UK and Comcast and these deplorably awful monopolies that they've created on such things, and cannot wait for independent networks. So this is why I am very passionate about speaking out, and thank you for letting me share this, because everybody that moans and groans about, oh, crypto, oh, you're going to be surveilled, CBDCs, digital IDs. This is only going to go as far as we let them, people, right? We're only going to be, compliant for so long. And I think more and more people are waking up to the corruption, which is why so many people are now saying, hang a minute, I like blockchain. I signed up for this because I believe in the power and the freedom of transacting without permissions, or without asking permission from a centralized database. I am not signing up to be under your control and surveil, to be monitored, essentially. And so, we might have to see it play out all the way. And what we're seeing right now in Australia is just that, or, these beta countries, Canada for one, that completely sell out. They'll take the money and run, and they basically want to beat everybody. Why? And I don't mean to be offensive when I say this, but it gets my point across. I mean, there's like 5 people in these countries, they're small enough to control and keep as their beta, but they're smart enough and innovative enough and that much forward thinking that they can adopt these new things without the people freaking out. They're not tribal, Aboriginal, people that aren't connected to the internet. These are 21st century working professionals that have believed and gone along with this whole narrative, and now they're being funneled or paddocked into this whole, carbon credit and CBDC nonsense. Forget that. This is just what they're trying on as they introduce new technology, because once they take the brakes off blockchain, it's all full speed ahead, and I cannot wait for that day.
Yeah, I love that, and I wanna respond to that. Okay, so we just needed a quick break there for a second. So what's wild to me is that, first of all, I love your like super white pilled take. Almost everybody out there has this crazy black pilled take of, oh, CBDCs is inevitable, oh, we're gonna lose, blah blah blah, all this negativity. I'm a little more I'm a slightly more cynical than you, but like basically on your side compared to the other people. Like I completely agree that, especially what I really love that you said is that CBDCs are the carrot to get the old guard tricked into this new system. Because I had a video come out about 18 months ago, actually. It was February of 2023, where I had, so I do angelic magic. I'm a Vedic astrologer, and I do angelic magic, and I teach angelic magic. And I sometimes say, that the British Royal Society basically got rid of the Second Amendment of spirituality, which was the ability to use psychic or magical abilities, that they, along with the Abrahamic religion, stamped out the use of various different esoteric, psychic, magical abilities in humanity, first by saying it's against God, right? Even though the story of the Bible has the 3 astrologers who actually saved Jesus's life, the 3 wise men, right? Even though there's all kinds of magic and astrology and all sorts of stuff in the Bible, they all of a sudden said, oh, nope, that's all bad. That's the devil. Don't do that. Even though their main guy, Jesus, right, who I love Jesus, Yeshua, like performed all these miracles, right? They say, oh, well, that's all act of God. That's somehow okay. If you go deeper in the weeds, you see that, he was a magician, he was trained, all this kind of stuff, right? If you look into it much more deeply than most people do, he went to India, learned yoga, all this kind of stuff. So
why do they do that?
Why did they do that?
Why do you think that people are so hesitant?
Remember Canada and Australia? What do they have in common? What did they get rid of? They disarmed their population. If you disarm a population of their magical, esoteric, and psychic abilities, and then just your little black sorcerer, Babylonian black sorcerers with your Babylonian magic of money magic are the only ones using magic, who's going to dominate the planet? The people who know that you can warp reality with these esoteric abilities. Are you seeking a deeper connection to the divine, along with a personal journey of transformation? Welcome to Angelic Magic Classes with White Lotus of Light, where the light of the angels guides you through the realms of spirit, the integration of your shadow, healing of trauma, bringing harmony, abundance, and purpose into your life. In our Angelic Magic Classes, you will explore the profound relationship between divine energies and personal growth. By connecting with the celestial angelic realms, you uncover a path to greater happiness, a stronger sense of purpose, and a life filled with abundance of all kinds, from material financial prosperity to an abundance of love and joy in your day-to-day life. Under the guidance of Ian Ferguson and our experienced angelic magic practitioners, you will learn the ancient art of theurgic angelic magic. Explore the metaphysics of magic, the hermetic principles that govern the laws of our universe, sacred rituals, divine invocations, and powerful spells that have been passed down through the ages. Our classes help you align with your higher self, unlocking the key to a more fulfilling life through personal transformation. Discover the divine light within, connect with angelic celestial beings, and navigate and transform the shadows of your internal psyche that hold you back from fulfilling your true divine purpose and mastery of your own life experience. Our course is designed to bring you peace, happiness, and abundance in all areas of your life. Don't miss this opportunity to transform your life with angelic magic and start your journey towards spiritual awakening, personal fulfillment, and a newfound prosperity and joy in your day-to-day life. It is time once again for those who feel the call to pick up the arms and armor of the Most High God and become divine protectors of humanity and join the ranks of the co-creators of this earth realm, that we might bring about a more peaceful, harmonious, and loving planet. So that's a bit of like context more so for you. So I do angelic magic and the angels talk to me. And one of the things they showed me was this image I'm about to show you, which is, so there's a hermetic principle called as above, so below. You hear it sometimes, that you can see things in the microcosm and it will be reflected in the macrocosm and vice versa. And so they showed me this. They said the coronavirus originally, right? Luc Montagnier, when it first came out, he said, oh, it's been made in a CRISPR, which I think I can talk about this now. And it has all these furin cleavage site spikes on the outside. But so it's very deadly when it's first released, but he predicted in like April or late March of 2020 that it would become much less deadly over time, because he said, as it moves back to its original coronavirus, which is just a cold, it would drop these spikes off and they'd have to release fresh batches, right, that were still deadly. So because of that, those spikes would drop off and then it become less deadly. So the angels showed me this image in my mind. They showed me how the coronavirus with the spikes is much like this new financial system. And here you have at the center XRP, you have USD, LTC, Euro, the Japanese yen, and at the center is XRP. That's sort of like the original cold. And these spikes, which are all the CBDCs, would fall off. Why? Because capitalism abhors fetters. The first person who figures out, the first big business that figures out, hey, why would I switch from USD to XRP to the digital pound and then back every time losing arbitrage percentage when I could just transact with someone else with XRP. Then I don't lose the double penalty of changing into the US digital currency and into the Great Britain, the CBDC for Britain and the CBDC for the USD. Why would I do that when I can just stay in this central thing? I'll immediately have gains. Those gains compound over time. The first business that does that is going to have a first mover competitive advantage. All the smart people are going to figure this out right away, and they'll just start transacting in XRP or XOM or whatever token or protocol they want. It's going to be XRP and XOM, in my opinion. The angels, by the way, told me in 2022, I believe it was, they said the new Luciferian system will be around XRP and XOM. At the time, I'd heard about crypto, all this stuff. I'm not like you. I don't have a tech background. And I was like, XRP, and I was like, well, I know what XOM because I own it, but XRP, I don't even remember seeing that on Coinbase, like, what is that? I didn't know what it was. I had heard of it maybe once or twice, but I didn't know what it was. And then when I investigated it, I was like, holy shit, like this is literally at the center. It's exactly what they said. So they showed me that there would be visions of some kind of gold and silver backed crypto that the Luciferians would use to destroy the Molochian parasitic banking system, just as Luke Mondinger noted in March 2020 that the CRISPR spikes added to the corona would fall off, rendering it harmless. So too, the spikes of the CBDCs will fall off, leaving a gold and silver backed cross-border peer-to-peer payment, supercharging free trade, as above, so below. Boom. So when that vision came to me, I was like, wow. And you just completely confirmed it with what you said from a completely different perspective, from a tech perspective. And so whenever I have secondary confirmation like that, I'm always like, wow, wow, wow. That's why I was like cheering when you were saying that, because I find that everyone says the same thing you do, or that you experience, which is they're all black-pilled. Oh, the CBDCs are benevolent.
Yeah.
I'm like, no. Businesses are going to figure out they don't have to use that system. And the minute they do, not for any moral reason, not for any spiritual reason, right? But for pure, dollar bill, y'all. They're going to want to exchange directly with the fundamental medium, the fundamental protocol, which is XRP at the very high level for big transactions, XOM at the smaller level, and there'll be others. There's going to be other, I also think that
that's what that interledger protocol, sorry not to interrupt, but that's what that interledger protocol is. It's the value in the protocol, which is the interoperability of those various blockchains. So so right now everybody's like, well, everything is, we're going to move out of the banking system because the banking system's so great, because it's so secure. I mean, right. Anytime that they can seize your assets anytime, just because they haven't already. They showed us they could. So that's what that value is. And that's that bridge asset, the ability to change in and out without being penalized. Right now, the banks are taking every bit of that they can. And of course they're pulling everybody in with CBDCs. They need adoption because banks, don't see the point. They're slow moving. They're not agile. They're not innovative. They're very kind of stalemate because they don't have to be anything. They can just sit back and print money and buy treasuries.
And so it's like a reverse Trojan horse, in the sense of the outside of the Trojan horse looks very menacing, CBDCs, social credit scores, all this kind of like hyper negative stuff. But inside that is this like little group of Luciferian Greek warriors that are going to stab all the bankers once that gets turned on. In my opinion, when that new system gets turned on next year, when they start using the ISO 222, although I've heard it maybe got pushed back to fall, I'm not 100% on that. Maybe you can clarify that. But when that system gets turned on, I think in very short order that the CBDCs will get ejected. Nobody wants them. Like even in Nigeria, right, a country that should be fairly easy to control, except for the fact you could make an argument they don't have anything to lose, so they don't have any buy-in, so they just reject it. But the Nigerians are like not using the CBDCs. They're saying, hell no, we don't want this. And so people will argue, oh, well, people in the West will be more susceptible to it because they'll have more to lose. They'll be less likely to stand up because they don't want to lose. And I think there's some legitimacy to that. But also people in the West, I'm sorry not to offend any Nigerian watchers, but like sort of the West, which has been more technologically advanced for a long period of time, there's also an embedded culture, especially in the United States, of these sort of libertarian ideas of freedom and liberty and not wanting to be controlled. And so I think that I feel like as the US goes, so goes the world, and that we're going to say absolutely not, because we're not like Canada or Australia, to your point. Go ahead.
Just on that note, it comes back to the federal versus state powers. So I had a girlfriend in Bali who was very concerned because obviously on that side of the world, they're pushing those CBDCs hard. She's Australian, right? So, and I said, listen, this will never happen in the United States, not because Jennifer says so, but because this is a division of federal and state powers. And these CBDCs are issued in state powers, and you're already having states come out saying F the CBDCs, Florida being one of them. And Oklahoma just recently came out saying that you could have your own self-custody. So that's the next thing they'll go after, is the ability to self-custody, because again, they're frightened as hell of your ability to have your own sovereign wallet, which I am so big on right now because of all the reasons I just mentioned. But so I sit there and I tell people, I'm like, so you mean to say that in this big, massive United States, superpower, there's going to be this one tiny island, Oklahoma, in the middle of it, that's going to be the safe haven, for self-custody? Everybody will move there. It won't, other states will start adapting this, or they'll drop off those spikes, which I thought was very interesting illustration you show there. That is interesting.
And Trump was just at the Libertarian conference, and he literally said, I will make sure that you're able to self-custody, which to me was like, oh my God, like, I think I might have to vote for him just purely based on that, because it's so important. Most people who aren't deep in crypto don't understand that the single most important aspect of crypto that must be guarded, a bit like the First Amendment and the Second Amendment, talking about level of importance, is that self-custody. Because if they forced you into third-party, or worse yet, bank custody, then the shenanigans could begin again. And so for Trump to come out and say that he promised, and I mean politicians and promises, right? But that he even brings it up, makes me think he will do it, simply because there's actually no reason to even bring it up. If both sides were this monolithic elitist, so many black-pilled fools say, they wouldn't even be touching or talking about some of these topics because they're too hot and dangerous. They would just have a blanket denial across the board. All the media and all the politicians. There's clearly factions at play. There's clearly factions at play, because if there weren't, we'd all have brain chips, we'd all be in pods, and we'd all be eating bugs already. And the fact that that is not happening, and that the propaganda is going up and it's getting more unhinged and worse, and the psyops are getting worse and more obvious, shows me that clearly there's multiple factions, and that the legacy faction, the old guard, is clearly losing. And a new, more savvy group is coming up, and it's clearly based, in my opinion, their nexus of power is this financial system, which is irresistibly moving forward. Welcome to the Introduction to Vedic Astrology course, where timeless wisdom blends with contemporary insights. Are you curious about the mysteries of the cosmos and how they influence our daily lives? Do you want to uncover the secrets of your destiny through the ancient art of Vedic astrology? Join us on this enlightening journey. Our comprehensive 8-week course is designed specifically for beginners. Join a supportive community of like-minded individuals, all eager to explore and learn together. You'll dive deep into the key concepts and principles of Vedic astrology, from understanding the zodiac signs and planetary positions to interpreting birth charts. This course offers a hands-on approach to learning. Discover the profound insights Vedic astrology can provide into your personality, relationships, career, and more. By the end of this course, you'll have a solid foundation in Vedic astrology and the skills to interpret astrological birth charts with confidence. Embark on your journey into the stars today. Sign up for the Introduction to Vedic Astrology course and unlock the secrets of the universe through astrology. Visit our website to learn more and enroll today. Your journey to self-discovery begins here.
Trump also said, you're absolutely right there, because Trump also said that he was going to move all Bitcoin to the US, the mining, which I also thought was very interesting, because you're going to regulate this space, you're going to control. I think Bitcoin's a trap. I mean, I'm sure you've heard me say that. I get a lot of crap for that. Oh my gosh. I went on GB News and I was slaughtered, but I don't care. I'm not changing my tune. I know what's going to happen with this particular issue. And this is not this. I met the Ripple Innovation team in 2016. My husband hacked the gold vaults of the Bank of England. He held banks clearance there. He helped do the security for all the Canary Wharf banks in London. So when I speak about, like, it is physically, like, it's not possible, the adoption is not there, it is never going to take off. It is because I have been working and seeing this space, and I have one of the brilliant, most technical minds ever, you know, building on the XRPL right now with me, that understands how this Web3 space plays out. And, you know, Bitcoin may have been great 10 years ago, people still believing it could go to 300K. Okay, watch it go to $1 million. Where are you going to sell it if they regulate it to hell? What are they going to do? What if they tax it? You know, there's so many things that are, you know, up in the air right now. Trump also wants to get rid of income tax. He also wants to get rid of taxes on the tips. Again, I'm not advertising for Trump, but there are a lot of just basic common sense that you don't have to love Trump to just get that this is a much better, you know, opportunity than staying amongst the fascist commies. The other thing I wanted to mention on the cryptocurrency is our gal Judy Shelton, who again might be a deep state shill, but her signature is on. Oh, that's Rosie Rios. Rosie Rios is on the dollar, but Judy was the one that came out talking about going back to the future in a cryptocurrency kind of way. She was. Oh my God, I don't want to mistake because I know I'll get slack for it, but I think she was at the Treasury and now and Ripple, and she's talking about a gold standard June of 2026. So, I mean, it's slow going that they're rolling this out, but I will not be surprised when we get a gold-backed blockchain system, you know, back to many metals, not just one. And then, you know, their desire for adoption is really reeking. And that's why I see the desperation in the, you know, CBDCs and pushing forward with digital currencies, because they're going to try to keep this, you know, can on the worms as much as they can. But once this happens and it's introduced, guys, there's no way. Same with digital IDs. You know, everyone freaks out about these digital IDs. Ian, there's a place. I mean, the Democrats in this country are screaming about but then they don't want voter ID. You know, when you go in to vote, they just want any old person. There might be something to having a digital ID and put everything on blockchain. But here's the thing: when you're in Web3, no one gets to rape and pillage that data. You have to give them the permission to access it via the blockchain. Everything's trusted and verified and held within. So you know, none of this like identity theft where your social security number is leaked. You only get one your whole life, and it's everywhere. I mean, identity theft is insane in this country, you know, more so in Europe, but you know my point. Like, there is a time and there is some rationale for having a digital ID of some sort and being able to identify yourself in transparent, you know, on blockchain. But that doesn't mean that there is any centralized, we should ever give power to any centralized database that controls that ID. That's why blockchain is so great, because it keeps the parameters, it keeps the permissions up. You only give them access to what you want them to. So when you go to vote, you scan your digital IDs, or, you know, whatever, maybe it's a QR code, maybe it's a NFT that you're doing, but basically there's lots of ways to use that digital ID without just it being synonymous with that surveillance. Because I'm absolutely 100% against all this real ID nonsense that California was pushing, and these smart, you know, just because I don't trust any one centralized, and we've seen this for years. I mean, they have tried, my husband was working in the cabinet office I think like 10 years ago. They had the technology to do this back then, the digital IDs. They didn't because they weren't going to get adoption. It wouldn't go through. There would be too many security headaches, logic flaws, exploits, problems that the government was never going to have the budget, the money, the resources, any of that to keep up with that. It's just, it will be a complete nightmare. And no better example of this is illustrated than the billions they spent on track and trace, which was a complete joke. They embezzled all this money in the UK to create this, who you've been exposed to fear mongering app. And no one used it. It was cool for 20 seconds. I mean, even the losers stopped using it. The selfie Vax card people. I mean, I'm thinking of Rory Sellin-Jones. He was the #1 loser I saw promoting himself with his new Vax card. What a douchebag. I hate all of these people, by the way, I call them out because they are complete knobs. I mean, just laugh at their face and tell them and push them aside. Anybody that pushed that narrative is no longer relevant. Ignore them, dismiss them, shut them down, and laugh in their face. That's my advice. Absolutely. But that's why I see track and trace is being the perfect example of showing, sure, they tried it on. Yeah, they fear-mongered a lot. They spent millions trying to brainwash you and psychological warfare, whatever. Yeah, how long did that app last? Maybe a year.
Yeah. So I have a very similar outlook to you, and so I'm glad to hear it. But mine's slightly more cynical. The way I look at it is that I see that the Luciferians want a global Earth, meaning like they want they want the entire planet integrated, right? They want us integrated in the Web 3.0. They want us integrated economically, and they want us to be able to go out into space. That's one of their big goals that I'm aware of. And they also, like the analogy I use between the way the Molochians run things and the way the Luciferians run things is like this. Imagine that you have a poker game and you're playing against a Molochian. You both draw your hand, and then the Molochians just put a pistol on the table and go, guess what? I win, and I'm going to take all your money, and I might just shoot you, and I might start by shooting you in the dick. I'm just going to make it as bad as possible for you. But just so you know, this game's not just rigged. It's already predetermined 100%. I'm going to win. I'm taking your stuff, and I'm doing it by force, and I'm doing it in a very clumsy way. The Luciferians, by contrast, you both draw your hands, and they've already counted the cards. They already have a good idea of what you're going to do, and things are tilted heavily in their favor. But then you go, wait a minute, are you rigging the game? And the Luciferians go, you're smart. Why don't you come on over and we'll talk about this, and we can talk about how you too can participate in a game that's rigged in our favor. It's not 100%. Right? It's not a predetermined. The smart people rise to the top. Meritocracy, right? But they'll let you in if you understand it. But they're not like an honest broker. They're not sitting there going, it's completely fair. It's completely random chance. They're using every edge they can. They're using everything they can to get ahead. So what I see is that this future system that's going to be adopted, it's going to have a digital ID. I totally agree with you. Just think it would be worth it for me, the digital ID, as long as it's not the communist Chinese version of it, right? It would be worth it just to get rid of people being assholes on the internet. Because you're not going to be an asshole on the internet when it's actually you. That's going to cut down on things a lot. It's going to get rid of all the anonymous trolls that do death threats and all this kind of stuff like that. A lot of the harassment will drop right off because it will be linked to an actual person. And think about it. Doing anything except for voting, you need an ID. You want to buy cigarettes, you want to buy alcohol, you want to get a gun, you want to get health insurance, you want to get a bank account, you want to do almost anything, you need an ID. As things become increasingly digitized, it just makes sense that we have to have a way of identifying. And you have just said that the technology is there, that we can have an ironclad identity that doesn't necessarily have this social credit score attached to it. It's just like we can have a digital currencies that don't have a social credit score. Where I perhaps part ways with you a little bit is I do think that there's going to be backdoors and ways to surveil this, but it will be used for things like nudging and light touch. They believe in a light touch oligarchical aristocracy through technocracy, as opposed to a top-down, utterly brutal iron fist slamming on the table. They're more like the velvet glove method. They're like subtle control, a subtle system that has a tremendous amount of freedom in it, but it's tilted in their favor, right? Do you see the difference there, as opposed to just complete domination and like there's no chance of moving ahead, there's no mobility, it's slavery, it's despotism. It's like, okay, we have an open society, but you have to be smart, you have to bring talent to the table to really rise to the top. And I don't see this system being like hyper egalitarian and everybody on earth and kumbaya. That's the golden age. That's far in the future, and we're moving in that direction. But between here and there, we're moving out of this darkness and tyranny and slavery, and we're moving into a more meritocratic, more basically libertarian is probably the best way of describing its system. But the libertarian systems do have a flaw in that some people aren't going to do well in it, right? Some people are just going to do whatever, but I think that they'll have a standard of living that will be at least reasonable. Whereas in the other system, they would be enslaved, they'd be homeless, or they'd just die, right? So it's going to be better, but I think that it's not going to be some kind of system to where everything's like perfect and wonderful. But I completely agree with you. We have to have a digital ID. It just makes sense. It's how is that rolled out? Because like a driver's license, yeah, you can say it has some kind of like negative things and blah, 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 sovereign citizen, and you're a commercial driver versus blah, 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 you know, when you get pulled over, you know, the whole sovereign citizen thing. There's some truth to all of that, but it's also like, okay, but we need an ID to do certain things. And that's been that way for hundreds of years in certain countries, you know, like the US. And so why would the need to identify yourself be any different in the digital realm? It's important, and it allows for actually fair transactions. If you don't know who you're transacting with, there's much more risk of scams and all these things, like you were saying, identity theft, all this kind of stuff. You know, it'll cut down on the hyper trolls, and it'll cut down on the scams and the criminal element. Sure, savvy criminals will figure a way around it, but it's going to cut down on things tremendously, and it's going to make things operate much more smoothly in the digital realm. And we're clearly moving into the digital realm. So
one thing to add on that, you know, like what you're mentioning, like, you know, there's always going to be somebody trying to control it on the top. I mean, that's, I feel like human nature. I feel like there will always be somebody that's, you know, and there are going to be features. For example, on the XRPL, you know, a clawback feature, for example, where money can be brought back. Now, of course, there could be nefarious uses for that. So if money is sent, it has the ability to, you're able to trace where that money went and bring it back. Or master passwords where you need multiple users. Sounds safe until it's not, until two different people get, you know, until someone gets a hold of both of those master passwords. I feel like that is just always going to be there. There's always going to be that power struggle between how much can we take, how much can we take. What we're talking about, though, is exiting an entire era of just control slaves, because they're always going to be pushing and pulling us. You know, that's the great, you know, live left versus the right, or whatever you want to, you know, the two sides. And I think, yes, I mean, we can use this technology for good or evil, and there will always be somebody on the top that's going to try to take a little bit more because they're in the position to do so. It's the nature of power. However, the fundamental difference with the Web3 is that there is no centralized database. So your driver's license right now sits in a state database. So if we hack the right database, we can find you, your arrest records, medical records, etc. That's asinine crazy to me. What instead should happen is you should be able to register as a registered voter in the state of, where are you? California, Michigan?
I'm in Oregon, thank God.
Oregon. Sorry, I knew you were Pacific Northwest.
Problems.
Oregon.
Oregon is horrifying.
How are you in Oregon?
Well, what people don't understand is California is pretty much, although it's changing, it's pretty much blue through and through. Oregon is actually really blue along I-5, and I'm off of I-5. I'm in like I'm near the conservative university, Oregon State University. And so anywhere outside of I-5, Oregon's actually red. In fact, the eastern half of Oregon wants to become part of Idaho because they're tired of Portland and Eugene and Ashland controlling everything. They want to become part of Idaho, actually, because they've like had it. And I'm like, no, please don't go. Like, I might have to move. to Eastern Oregon if that happens. But if you get out in the rural areas, which I'm basically like semi-rural where I live, it's completely different. It's old school 1990s Oregon the way it was before all this insane liberal stuff happened. But anyways, that's
Nice.
here or there. But I think this is a good place to kind of stop part one. And then in part two, I want to talk about your take on the EU recent elections. And then some people may or may not know that in addition to being an absolutely brilliant entrepreneur and very like savvy understanding the financial tech system, one of the things that you are known for is that you had a relationship with Boris Johnson. And the reason I bring that up is simply because you are of the opinion that something has happened to him. And you even thought on your channel, when I came on your channel, that perhaps he had been cloned or replaced by a double or an actor wearing a high-tech mask, that he's really different. So I want to get into that. And I want to talk about this sort of doubles, clones, actors, and masks thing it seems that we're seeing.
Yeah.
And just talk about kind of where both of us see things going. And we'll be talking about all of that in the second half because there's definitely something to it. I was much more dubious about this idea of clones like a while ago, but now I'm starting to go, there's at least doubles that are in there. And I don't know how deep that rabbit hole goes. And I'm starting to see it like everywhere. And it's different with you. And we'll talk about it in the second half because you actually knew him personally. And that's the only reason I'm bringing this up, because I love talking about all your extreme knowledge about the tech stuff. And I know a lot of people pigeonholed you about that Boris Johnson thing. But to me, the reason it's relevant here is I want to talk about those clones and what's happening politically. So we'll see you all in the second half. And Jennifer, thank you so much. And yeah. Great. Fantastic. See you in the second half.